about that.
Everybody ready?
We're ready to go.
Call to order the regular meeting, Tuesday, January 2nd, 2018, of the Board of Trustees. Could we please observe a moment of silence to honor the people who stand guard inside and outside our borders to protect and serve? Thank you. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Steve Nelson.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hope Morris. Larry Clark.
Here.
Adrian Sandoval.
Here.
Kim Nelson.
Here.
Michael Cowper.
Here.
Troy Blum.
Here. Okay. Nice to see all the smiling faces. Approval of the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second. Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Audience participation. Are we going to postpone the oath of office?
Yes, till next month.
Till next month, okay. I thought that's what the chief had said. Okay, next we have water supply plan update. Mr. Rankin.
Mr. Mayor, members of the board, Happy New Year. With us tonight, we have Brad Hagan from Civil Resources. Initially, the board received the draft water supply plan. We had some scheduling conflicts, but Brad's here tonight along with David. And I want to mention that Steve Terrace, engineer, has also reviewed the plan and passed on some of his comments to Mr. Hagan, which are more staff-oriented. But Brad is here tonight. Come on up, Brad, to the podium. Address any questions, general or specific, the board may have regarding what he's provided to the town of Platteville.
Y'all had a chance to digest that thing, and I'm just sort of curious, with our water, can that, like our Platteville ditch water, have they changed what we can do with it? Have they loosened up? Is that strictly for ag use or irrigation use, or have they, because my understanding was they were going to loosen the restrictions on that.
That's not my understanding. My understanding is actually, if anything, it's gotten harder to manipulate the water even within a town system for other uses, because there's so much stress on the system up and down by, the bigger entities coming up in this area. They're really, they'll get into, they'll question everything, and the commissioners are following the share usage a lot closer than they used to. So I've not seen anything. I'm not an attorney, but I would have seen that, and I work with water attorneys, and they've not said that there's any loosening of any of the laws as far as the use for ag, unless you're talking about lawn. Lawn irrigation has been accepted as ag use, as an acceptable, unchanged use of the water, of the direct flow water. That has passed, and it's been most of the municipalities around here. I work with the town of Frederick. They have a raw water irrigation system. They use historic direct flow shares of mainly Lower Boulder and Coleridge for lawn and open space irrigation owned by them, parks.
Is that through well augmentation or through direct supply from the ditch?
That's direct supply, and they also have a reservoir.
Okay.
So they can supplement the direct flow. Although Lower Boulder's the ditch that irrigates a lot of that area historically, and it's actually the most senior right on the whole South Platte River that flows right through there. So it runs a full irrigation season, if you call it. So you don't really need storage on that one. But you do on a lot of the other ones, and they happen to have had this old lake right as well.
I know, one more question. I know years ago we talked to you about in Rainy Ray, I think it was Central, right? About a change of use on the ditch to augment our wells. Is that still water court change of use issue, 100,000 give or take, the ballpark figure I remember saying?
Unfortunately, there's been a lot of entities that have tried to use it as an augmentation, since the water they're using, pumping out of your well, is for irrigation, so you think you could just substitute the two, but as soon as you change the timing of deliveries because of the lag in the river, you gotta put a plan together, and that's called a change of use, because of now it's augmentation, not irrigation. So the end result is you still want irrigation water. So,
Well, that's surface water versus groundwater, so.
right.
Okay.
Moving on here, Brad. Who do you work for?
I'm a engineering consultant.
Okay.
I work for Civil Resources. I'm a owner in the company. We started the company about 15 years ago.
I'm relatively new on the board, and I just don't know who all the players are and how the pieces go together, so.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, we've been working with the town of Frederick pretty much since 15 years ago we started, and doing water rights work with them. We also do work with Central Colorado.
Consulting firm,
Yes.
essentially.
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So with the growth of, like you said, Frederick, you've seen that, the way that community's grown. You've worked with them to get the resources of water. You know, I guess we're still pretty good here in our town, but if we have growth, you know, what avenues besides to get some of that water that they're planning on bringing on with that new reservoir up there, other options? I know we had a briefing a couple months ago with all the different types and things we could do. We went to try to purchase them out of Louisville over there or something like that. So is that their biggest resource that we can, if we had that growth and needed to buy some water, is that the route we would have to take?
I mean, policy is the first thing that the town, because I don't think the town's in a position where you want to take on a $10 million loan in order to start securing hard water rights, buying a storage facility, which is really where you'd need to go to firm up whatever rights you bought around here, because they're going to deliver I mean, and there's like, in the report I talk about 2 phases, because the first phase is you need to collect the rights, and then to really use them to the fullest benefit, you'd want to change some of them in order to supplement your potable supply, which would require local treatment, and it's a much larger process. That's why partnering opportunities and larger regional
Like other communities?
plans, is really kind of a starting point in staff to start looking at some of those options. There's a lot of bigger programs going on. Central Colorado Water Conservancy District is really interested in working with the municipalities. I mean, it has to be a win-win, obviously, and you got to look for those opportunities and not just be a customer.
What's the rate for water? When you go buy, purchase water, is it just based on whatever the consumer, or the bidding price?
Unfortunately, it's the Auroras and all the other competitors coming up the river that are ballooning the cost. So, you know, in hindsight, you guys could have been collecting so many water rights at so much less money 15, 20 years ago. Right now, you're kind of under the gun, and even holes in the ground are going, just for the dry hole in the ground, you're paying probably $3,500 to $4,000 an acre foot of just the dry hole. Then you got to get water to put in it. So, I mean, it adds up fast. But if you're really interested in supplying water to your whole service area, you know, like you have planned in your future planning area, then you should probably either get involved in it now, or you might end up being like shorted water and not ever realize that development. But developers are pretty creative too, so if you decided to say, you know, we're out of the business, we're not gonna be the water supplier, and you guys need to develop in the county or have some other, you can't really stop them from developing, you can't just say, we don't have any water to sell you, sorry, you can't develop.
So does that happen where developers come in and say, hey, we're gonna develop it, but we bought this water right to put with it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then you'll say, well, we don't have any way to treat it. And they'll say, well, we'll put in a batch plant, or we'll make a deal with somebody, you know, that, a larger development where they'll actually come together and build your infrastructure for you, or outside of you. Because at that point, they won't want to pay your fees if you're not providing the service and all that. So you really kind of lose control if you don't, if you're not able to supply.
Is the shallow water wells, is that water, how treatable is that water? Is that water treatable still with all the nitrates and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's treatable, anything's treatable, there's treating salt water now. It's the cost. It's just
Exactly.
the cost, yeah. I mean, it ends up being, you know, it can be $2.50 a thousand, depending on the size of your plant and all that. It can get up there just for the treatment cost, let alone the water right and the plans and all that. So it can really start to elevate. You know, you're looking at a reverse osmosis RO plant, usually because of the nitrates, because of some of the residual pharmaceuticals. You know, you're starting to get a lot of stuff in the water by the time it gets down here.
Exactly.
So,
So that is an allowable use, shallow wells, surface wells?
It would have to be included in the plan. You'd have to do an augmentation plan. Really, the well itself is just permitted under central plan, augmentation plan, which, so it doesn't really have a water right inherent to it.
Correct.
Without that. So, I don't think central's plan allows for potable use actually, so that might even be an option. But you could put a well in anywhere along there, your own well, a better well, a bigger well, higher capacity well, and use it. You just have to have a plan to augment that depletion. It's just putting together a plan, so there's no real water right, huge benefit, other than Central's got an approved plan already. You would have to go through a separate plan if you want to use it for municipal.
Okay, so that would be, even in our circumstance, that would be a change of use. Okay. I didn't know if all the boards do, that we have what seems like a small share of Platteville ditch, but it ends up being a lot of acre feet of water. So it gives us options that other communities may not have. It's just we have to deal with the usage, the legal ramifications of that.
Right, you have to put it in, put it through water court, which is unfortunately a lot of money just to get it through the process with attorneys and engineering, and, whatever.
From what I've seen, it doesn't take too many shares of CBT to pay for that, though.
True. That's true. Yeah, they've gotten ridiculously expensive these days.
A while back, we sent you our contract with Central, going back to Central Well, and you read that. Talking about what Troy hit on future growth, the town wants to grow, a developer comes in. I think we spoke about this, but right now we feed everything off our master meter through Central Well. If someone wants to develop on the north side of 32.5, and they can't tie into our system, does our contract allow us, and I think, David, you talked to Central about this, where we establish a secondary master meter through the town to supply that developer, and they bring in those water rights? Is that?
I don't think it precludes it, but there again, that might be better town attorney opinion, but, I don't think it precludes it, but, yeah, Frederick has like 15 master meters off Central's system. That just, so they don't have to build all their internal infrastructure that duplicates the grid that surrounds Frederick.
So it's a realistic option?
Yeah. It's like, I think the last I saw was around 15,000 for a new master meter.
I think years ago when we talked about West Launch coming in, that was going to be on a separate master meter.
Correct.
Off of Canada 21, I think.
But we were also looking at the same thing for subdivision off of County Road 38.
That would be a separate master meter as well. We've had a few private residences come in, or businesses where they don't tie in, like on County Road 38 north of town, and we just refer them directly to Central. We don't get any revenue off that. It doesn't violate our contract, because they're still supplying the water to a Platteville property.
Well, you can, I would think that you should be able to, I mean, Frederick, owns everything downstream of the master meter. So they administer it to everybody. They bill everybody. They're on their billing cycle. That's everybody downstream of the meter if they're in the plant, if they're in the town.
If it was a larger group of properties, I can see that. But
Oh, it's like a single user?
Well, it's not worth, it's not cost effective to do that. So we did talk about that, but it's not cost effective. So,
I thought you were talking about like a group of houses or...
if it was a group of, small subdivision, yeah, it'd be worth it.
So we have 4 communities within our area here, like Fort Lupton, us, Gilchrist, LaSalle. Would it behoove us to work together as these 4 communities to say, hey, this is what we're looking at, and growth is happening, it's going to happen, and we need to look at purchasing water. Would we have more buying power if we work together to buy it, and then work out our breakage of shares that way?
I think that the more people contributing to this local system, the better. It just provides a larger population base to distribute costs into. I think your water supply right now is adequate, but could use a little buffer, padding. So there's some justification for maybe increasing the per thousand rates, if you wanted to just use that to kind of pad your existing. The town board has pretty wide discretion from what I've seen on how you generate the funds for each thing. When we do water rate studies, we try to justify each fee based on where it goes, have real, basis for the actual per thousand costs. And so, like, if you wanted to come up with funds to purchase another 50 CBT units to firm out just the town here, or 100 units, you would make a plan to increase rates for a certain amount of time, or at a certain rate. There's options.
So could we go to Central Water and say, hey, we want to buy this many more units, and what's the price on that? And they would say, okay, yeah, here you go. Or how would that work?
Well, you'd have to find somebody selling.
Yeah.
So they don't have control, like they're the main broker?
No, there's not a
We have to find
central
somebody
bank or
that-
anything. It's all privately spread out, so you gotta find people willing to sell.
It's like buying real estate.
Yeah. And quite honestly, the volume of CBT available is shrinking so far down. That's in private hands. It's all kind of under contract and controlled. Not all. It's getting more.
So how does the word get to us that, hey, they're selling some water here? I know we had that one that we went try to look at, maybe bid on, but how do we know? Is it put out there, notifications out there?
I think you could probably get a list and contact people. I'm sure there's ways to notify Central if they find out someone's selling units and you want to supplement. And I'm sure Central will be happy to have you have more water, because then that just cushions their overall portfolio too, because of the carryover. If you don't use it, they get a portion and it carries over. So they're happy to have their internal group get more and more shares, as opposed to it being, sent to Broomfield or some of those other places that are getting it.
Brad, for the board, would you let them kind of explain real quick who Northern is, who Central Colorado, and then Central Well, since we've got the 2 centrals that tend to get confused?
Northern is, I guess, kind of the agency that put together the whole CPT program and was granted by the federal government to put this infrastructure together and develop these water rights, trans-basin water rights. So they're the ones that originally brought the water over and then gave it to all the farmers as a supplement. It was under contract. It was given to all the farmers as a supplement to their direct flow, and that's why it's distributed out to everybody that has always owned land out here. And then so they're just kind of the overall like, in order to buy something, buy CBT shares, you have to submit an say, this is the deal we've got, we'd like to buy these shares. And if you're not included in the northern district, or if you're not part of the group that's supposed to be using the shares, then they'll deny you. So they've got to approve pretty much every transaction. And obviously Central Weld is just the treatment and delivery infrastructure guys. And then Central Water Conservancy is Randy Ray, is the manager, and basically that's a conglomerate of farmers that had alluvial wells that were all, when that big water court case came through, and they all said your water rights are not valid anymore, they started scrambling around and saying, oh crap, and they started buying a bunch of direct flow shares, putting all these plans in place to make sure they could still be pumping their wells and keep farming. But now that they've got so much water, they've got such a big plan that they're starting to expand into actually providing water and teaming with municipalities, because once you have, they've got, you know, tens of millions of dollars invested in all of this, so now they're trying to balance out some of their investment and probably make some money back. I don't know how all the paperwork balances, because they're a public, I think they're a public group.
I think they are, because years ago when we met with Randy Ray, most of you on the board weren't on the board at the time, I believe, but we're looking at doing the water change in the court in Central with Randy. They were going to pursue that on behalf of the town, but in exchange, the mayor remembers it's been exchanged, we would not pay anything, but we would give them, they were asking for a 20-year lease of our, quote, excess ditch water in return for going to the water court. And that wasn't the deal we were willing to make at the time. It's too long a commitment.
Right.
But yeah, you're right, it's maybe something we can maybe look at partnering with in the future.
Yeah, and I think they've gotten a little bigger, and, I mean, their board is still pretty business-oriented. They want to win any deal. So yeah, it's a pretty good negotiation starting point, that you both got to be winners, then otherwise there's no point.
Sure.
But yeah, they're big. I mean, they have water clear down to Chatfield and clear out to Fort Morgan, so all the way up and down the South Platte.
Brad, one of the things that you guys did for us as part of this report was the visiting with the Sarchat family as far as kind of documenting their, am I using the right term, consumptive use of our excess water that they've leased from us. Now, can you explain to the board how that's beneficial to us when it comes to a change of use, and why we needed that information?
Sure. So when you go to water court, what you're claiming that, say you have 100 acre feet in your water right, and typically around 50% of that was used by the crops, or by the livestock, or by whatever historically it considered the water consumed. So the plants take up about 50% of what's actually applied to the ground. So you get about 50 acre feet of credit if you could prove, based on crop usage and fields irrigated with your particular shares, if you could prove that it consumes on average 50 acre feet per year, then that's the credit you would get at when it came out of water court. So where the town has some exposure, potential exposure, is because hopefully the Sarchet statement helped solidify that some, was that there was really no firm agreement in place for Sarchet to use that water on a particular piece and not mix it with any other water. So it would have been hard to document historic use. But since we have a statement from him that helps firm it up, one thing that I didn't like about it is that he said he used it on a field that's actually above the ditch that needs to be pumped onto the field. And obviously back when the water right was adjudicated in the 1800s, they weren't pumping water. So that's a potential expansion of the original intent of that ditch. So what really it was intended to do was irrigate Old Town here before, this is all under the ditch. So this is all probably irrigated by it back in the day. We saw some evidence of it, of those laterals coming across. So, but when that dried up, then you're looking for more land. So there's some, you want to make sure when you go to court that you have a pretty good, solid documentation of that, because that'll be scrutinized.
But without the Sarche statement that they were using our water since the 60s or whatever, we would have had a pretty serious exposure as to saying that water had actually been used to extinction or used.
Right.
So at this point, we're able to document from, I believe it was the early 60s through current, and then last year, we actually had a signed lease with them, and we'll get that again this year for those excess shares, so we'll actually have paper document. And we were able to find some paper between the 60s and last year.
The change that was completed on the Platteville milling actually was considered a ditch wide, which is a pretty big benefit to shareholders. Even though you guys didn't pay for it, the changers of the water did, but they considered it a ditch wide, and that might be something that an attorney would look at, and that's how they would present this in water court, was that this ditch wide sets the precedent in the historic use for the entire ditch, and therefore our share is 5% of the total ditch, and therefore we should get 5% of the ditch wide study that showed this many acre feet. So if it ever came back to that an attorney didn't feel like it was firm enough because it was above, or and that might be the best approach.
Was that the Cannon case that you're
Yes.
discussing right there? Okay. I didn't realize that.
So just to clarify, when you're talking about water court, you're talking about us going in to try to change the usage of the water. I mean, we're right now, the fact that we didn't use it, I mean, we're not looking at losing it. It's just if we wanted to change, use it for something else, and we wanted to augment.
Someone would really have to have a spur under their saddle to take you to court to try to get your right abandoned. And I don't think there was ever any intent to abandon, and they got to prove intent to abandon. So it's a hard thing to make someone abandon their right, just because they don't like it, or for no good reason. So I wouldn't be too worried about that part. But when you go to court, that's when, if you were